Hello and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Ranger Show. My name's Russell Gerber, with you, of course, for the next half an hour as we go through the animals on the live cameras, and of course some of our wonderful highlights from the last week or so. As always, if you have any questions or anything on your mind, or even just to give us a shout out and say hello, please feel free to pop a question in the question box below, and we'll do our best to get to them. We've kicked off the show today at the beautiful tower, of course. You can see a couple of impala grazing on those new shoots that have been coming through. Once again, all looking pretty peaceful and quiet around the waterholes in the afternoon. As we touched on last week, it's not various antelope species, big herbivores and megafauna have moved away into the other parts of the reserve, especially after the rains. If there's some new water available for them in other locations other than these permanent water sources, it of course gives them the option to head out there, raise other areas, feed of the as our impala are making short work of the tiny new shoots creeping through there. And we've got a buck arriving on the scene. Of course, in the background there, we've got a blue laying down. And hello to Stephanie from Virginia. Lovely to have you back with us, as always. Cook Sisters with us on the ball here with your IDing. Very impressed, all of you. I got a tough one for you, but I won't give you the whole show to guess today. I'll just give you a little time, but I've got a new animal U2 ID. We'll see if our bird knowledge carries over into our amphibian knowledge. So, without further ado, let's have a look at our first highlight that we wanted to show you. As we look on at our lovely waterbuck, this looks like a younger one. Let's go to that first highlight if we can. As I said, looking fairly quiet here. And here we go. Let's see how your frog knowledge is. Now, there was some debate about this particular species, but can any of you tell me what species of frog or toad this is? And we think we've nailed it. It's not one we see all the time around the waterholes. It was quite fun to catch. But quite a unique call as well. You can hear it going through the chorus of the other frogs as well. See, this one's dual or lateral vocal sacs. Those are the sacs that actually make the sound. But there you go. So what you folks think? Any idea what frog species that is, or toad? I'd love to know your thoughts. And then, Cook Sister, you asked about spotting a few impala and a bit of activity going on in the last couple of days. We've actually got something for that a little later, and I'll touch on that and come back to your question. But thank you for sending that through. Hello, Fike. Welcome back. Lovely to have you with us. Fike has guessed a red toad. It's a pretty good guess. I actually first thought it was a toad when I first looked at it. But on further investigation, we've discovered that it is in fact a frog, or one of the frogs. So, good guess, Fike. And I'm not sure who asked this question, but somebody put through the difference. What is the difference between a deer and an antelope? Which is actually a lovely question. It's something we get asked quite often. And without getting into too much of the scientific details involved, the biggest or main difference really between them is that deer species, the males tend to have antlers, which, as many of you will know, they shed after the rutting season. Whereas for the antelope species, those and they are, if one breaks, they don't grow back. And another important difference to note as well is that deer antlers are generally branched. I know you get 10 or even 12-point deer, but for the antelope, the horns are not branched like that. Good example of our beautiful waterbuck here. So I hope that answers your question. That's pretty much the easiest way to tell them apart. And we got an ostrich in the background there that our waterbuck is checking out. Why don't we head over to Kwamaritan? Let's see what we got on the cameras on that. As we get a closer look at this, it looks like a male ostrich. And here we are at Kwa with some beautiful zebra hanging about. These beautiful plains zebra or Burchell zebra. We got another guess on our frog species, painted reed frog. Nope, painted reed frog's quite a lot smaller. But a good guess nonetheless. It's quite difficult to tell the size, or something that I also had some difficulty with on the camera zooming in. It's not always easy to see how big they are, but to put you out of your misery out there, folks, it was in fact an ornate frog. Ornate frog. And as I said, we had those beautiful dual or lateral vocal sacs, which is also quite indicative of that particular species. And the reason it has that name is it has a beautiful coloration, which of course we can't see on the night camera. They have a beautiful green and orange and brown coloration pattern on their backs. And that's how they got that term or name, the ornate frog. But well done, it was a pretty tough one. As I said, we had to deliberate amongst ourselves, and James came to the fore with the correct ID. And one thing about the ornate frog is you don't actually see them that often, because they spend a lot of time underground actually, which is fairly common of a lot of the toad species. We often get asked, what's the difference between a toad and a frog? And it's actually a bit of a redundant question. Toads are actually part of the frog family, Anura. And here you see those vocal sacs that I was talking about. And that's the male that has them, not the female, but you could see the coloration on it is really quite beautiful. Hence the name ornate. But that key body, which of course does expand when they are vocalizing like that, is really make it easy to confuse with a toad or a red toad, which does look quite similar. If you do have Google, and you can have a look at what the red toad looks like. But well done, there you go, ornate frog. So as I say, they spend a lot of time underground as a burrowing species, and they tend to hibernate in pretty deep sandy soils, and we only see them during the breeding season. So again, another reason why we don't see them as often as some of the other species, like we mentioned already, red toad, painted reed frog, the caicos, cassinas as well, which is quite a common call we hear around the waterholes this time of year. But there you go, ornate frog. So hopefully we learned something new today. And a quick hi from Betty in North Dakota. Lovely to have you with us, Betty. And yes, we finally got some cheetahs on the cameras. Yeah, they've been hiding from us for a while, but back again. Of course, briefly, we had them for a couple of days, but yeah, always a wonderful species to catch on the cameras. As we go back live now at Tau. An ostrich is looking for any little bits of food it can get its little beak on. Seeds, grass, even insects, some rock as well sometimes, to aid in digestion. You hear that call in the background, which is a lovely African call, which is of course a white-faced whistling duck. White-faced duck, they changed the name too. I thought the whistling duck was quite a lot more fun. We often see them in big flocks all together. When they take off, they all call at the same time, which can be quite impressive. Little black-winged stilts wandering about as well, and there are our white-faced ducks. A pretty accurate name, I would say. A well thought out name. But you can see quite handsome birds indeed. And actually one of my favorite African bird calls is that whistle, mainly because I can imitate it quite well. I won't do it now into the microphone, but you know, it's nice and easy to replicate, unlike many of the others. Why don't we dive into our next little highlight that I wanted to show you. We got some fun stuff on the highlights that we've caught on camera. This is another one we wanted to show you as well. This little tortoise was hanging around as well at the waterhole, so we might catch it again. We're keeping an eye on it. But it's a three-legged leopard tortoise. I'm not sure at all how it got injured or what happened to it. Could have been any number of things, from a predator or getting injured in some way whilst moving about. It's not uncommon for young lions, even adult lions, to have a go at tortoises. Hyenas have been known to do it, a number of birds of prey as well. Ground hornbill is also known to take on the poor tortoise. So that shell can be quite formidable, and you can see it's quite rigid on this particular one. It often indicates a slightly older individual. Those ridges, it's actually known as a term called scute pyramiding, which happens when it has a deficiency in its diet, normally calcium. And this one, though, looks like, you know, that shell is looking fairly dead at the moment, so it may not be getting the food that it needs. But as we head into the summer months, it's likely that that will improve. We might see more of the typical leopard tortoise coloration as we get into the better grazing months when the real rains arrive. We're back live now, of course, with our Egyptian geese. And then Sue from her through a question as well. Hi Sue, welcome back. And she asks, well, it's a very good question, Sue. But for those of you who don't know, and I'm sure you do know something about it, Sue, but essentially what the science tells us at the moment is that it's been recorded that quite often a number of female ostriches will lay their eggs together in one nest, and then generally only one female and one male will then do all the work after that. So it's almost like kids for permanent daycare, which is not a terrible idea. Certainly not for the ostrich. And yeah, so the science has recorded that we've seen these essentially permanent daycare units where the one particular pair of male and female adult ostriches will then be forced to look after that entire clutch. The only major reason that I can think of for behavior like that, if I'm honest with you, Sue, is to just cut down on the potential for predation. So I would suspect that you'd get that kind of behavior more commonly in areas with a number of potential predators around. Perhaps even areas like this at Tau, where there are a number of potential clutch thieves. Jackal, hyena, brown hyena, lion. And of course even things like the African rock python. But a great question and a very, very interesting behavior as we watch our beautiful zebra, who Kim Twister, hi Kim, thanks for joining us. She calls them prison ponies. I like that, Kim. They are something like, they do look something like convicts. I'll go with that. And Jim Long, thanks for joining us. Also coming to us from Ohio. Thank you very much for your kind compliment, Jim. I hope you're enjoying the show. But while we watching our zebras here, Tau moving away from us, let's go to our next highlight that we wanted to show you all. And this one, coming back to Cook Sisters' question about the rutting activity that we've seen. Now, Cook Sister, just from watching these young males here, they do look quite young. I would say they've got probably at least another season or two before they'll really challenge for dominance. It is certainly too early for the rutting season. You normally start seeing that at the beginning of winter, normally around April or May. Might start seeing that, but generally in May and certainly June, we start seeing some fierce fighting between the big dominant males, often a lot of broken horns, which, as we spoke about earlier, they don't replace. And that, of course, can be a hindrance to becoming a dominant male. But these do certainly look like youngsters in training for the big fight in a few years' time. But awesome to get such nice close-up shots of it. I do love this low-angle camera. As you watch with these two getting stuck basically together, it's not unheard of that they get permanently stuck together. But what it certainly does do is cause issues for them when it comes to predators. And when the males are in full-blown rut, they are often highly distracted. And once again, that can play into the hands of some of the predators on the lookout for. But thanks for your question, Cook Sister. And well spotted. As we go back live now to Camphor's Dam. A couple of springbok here in the foreground, and of course our beautiful flamingos behind. Oh, something spooked them. We had some really wonderful sightings here at Campers Dam as well of late, so I hope you've all been keeping your eye on it. Some really cool species that we don't see very often. Some great footage of aardvark from a few weeks ago. We caught them actually briefly mating. Again, just not a species we see very often on the other cameras, and very exciting to get into all these new areas. Before we run out of time, let's go to our last highlight. And this from the Nomad Camp, where we had a strange visitor to the den. A couple of strange visitors. We of course had some warthogs come and investigate the den while the adults were away. Now the pups of course will be down in the den, which is just behind that green bush in the foreground you can see on the left hand side of your screen. And there you see that warthog investigating the hole, perhaps looking for a spot to lay out, only to discover, whoa, this spot is occupied. You'll be picking up the scent on the ground. You can see here this one sniffing around where the dogs have been playing and about. And that male probably trying to figure out what's going on. There you can see a pup that was hanging out outside of the den. He's decided to swiftly head back home. And there you go, an adult arriving back home. And to show you what a formidable enemy the warthog can be, you see how they stood their ground and even chased the dogs off for a brief moment. And those tusks on the warthog, of course, can be really impressive weapons. For those of you who joined us for the show a couple of weeks ago, we saw that Rosie's female leopard with a serious injury on her back right hind leg, if I'm not mistaken. And we were told that was from a warthog injury. As you can see, after a little time, those dogs managed to chase off the warthogs, who can be absolutely fearless when they need to be. I have seen packs of wild dogs taking down warthog, but normally only when the pack is certainly one-on-one, a big adult male, like we were watching there, is a little bit too risky for a skinny wild dog. Back live now with some beautiful light. You hear a towel, just a couple of clouds, and hopefully not too far away from some big rains. Here a towel. But as I mentioned in the past, it's not bad. Certainly not bad as it has looked by at the end of winter. Our waterbuck looking straight back at us. A very young zebra in the background running about between the herd. And just a quick question from Mouse Per asking about that female leopard. We haven't heard anything since last week when we got some feedback that grabbed a discarded kill and took it away up into a nearby tree. It seems like she's doing okay. She's walking okay. And from what we've heard, she is, for the time being, still alright, but a big concern there infection. So as soon as we hear anything more definitive, Mouse Per, I promise we will relay that information to all of you. It really is baby season now. Lots of fun ahead in the summer months. But unfortunately, we've run out of time for today, folks. And once again, thank you so much for joining us. For all of our guests from the USA, a warm and happy Thanksgiving to all of you for tomorrow. I hope you all have a lovely time spent with family if you can. I will be doing Thanksgiving down here of my own. My wife is from the USA, so we'll be celebrating with you. So have a wonderful weekend, and to everyone else, keep safe out there. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back again same time next week for the Africam show. And if you want to check me out on Instagram, you can find me at Russ the Ranger. I'm always on there. If you do want to pop me a question or say hi, feel free to do so. Thanks again, everyone. See you next week. Cheers for now.